Right, all after the last video which I posted, there was some minor issues. I am sorry about that. As you noticed, that the video ended abruptly, and unfortunately I lost the rest of the film. So this is a follow-up of the results that I achieved and the velocities that I achieved, and a couple of home truths that I found. Right, I'll try and get into this. Hopefully this comes out the right way around and I don't have to do it again, but here we go. Now, don't worry about the top, that's the Hornet that I just played with. Now the 125 SSTs, they shot reasonably well. Surprisingly, I got the best velocity out of AR2206H. Now, these velocities, I'm going to redo this and re-video it and revisit it again with a new batch. I've actually done a whole new batch of ammo. Brass has only been fired using the grain of wheat, what do they call it? The wheat method, and cleaned. All been trimmed and sized and neck turned and primer pockets reamed, and then I weight sorted it with batches of the grain variation. Try and keep some variables down because I got some rather erratic variations in the velocities that I got. All I'm going to put it down to is the possibly the cases, or it could have been the chronograph, and it was an overcast day and I did get quite a few errors. So having that been said, let's go through these. I'll have a look at these cases first. Test chamber. Actually, no, as I go through I might do it this way. The new loads that I've done with the test chamber, I've actually made them all for 10th thou off the lands. With the 125 grain SSTs, that gives it about 140 thou seeding depth in the projectile, which is not much, but I was concerned that 100 odd thou jump with this tiny little projectile with its very tiny bearing surface may not work well with it. The 165s on the other hand was very close. They were about 50 thou off the lands. They're now 10 thou off the lands. And the 180s, 185 La Porte Santas were 10 thou off the lands to start with, because that's what the ream was originally made for. So now all the new batch has been done with all of it being 10 thou off the lands. And neck tension was quite consistent in this new batch. So hopefully that'll take a variable. The other variable I had, you can see in the excuse me, the last movie, is that the actual, when I had it on the bipod, I noticed when I was watching the movie afterwards, I was sneaking back a bit and I didn't realise that Picatinny rail on the front was actually hitting the forestock on the tripod, on the front rest, and causing it to jump. So that would have made some variations as well. So I'll need to remove that. Now the other thing was too that the 10 power scope that I had, this is a 1/2 inch dot. That dot is nearly taken up with the dot that I've got, and it's very hard to aim. So on this next lot of loads that I'm going to test, which are loosely based on this, these new ones, excuse me for a minute. Charlie, what are you doing? My cat's keeping me company and he's making a noise down under the table. Will you stop that? Thank you. Sorry guys, I've got a touch of industrial asthma according to the doctors. Now, where was I? Right, yes, the rifle. I'm actually going to put a 32 power scope that I've got there, which will make testing a little bit more easier and quite good. One other thing I did notice that I did fire 10 rounds. I fire one shot off, then I would put three shot groups in, and then I would also towards the end of the groups I would just put the first shot on paper anyway, so the clean cold bore, and by the end of it the clean cold bore was printing at the same point, so the barrel is really starting to settle down now. Now this group here, I don't know if you can see that. Yep, you can see that. I'll just put the bit of white paper behind. This is the BM2, 32 grains of BM2 at 2.055 inches with 155 SST. The new load will be at 2.150 inches, which is 10 thou off the lands, and I've got 140 thou engagement. First three shots are in here. I thought, oh, it's starting to work all right. I moved the scope up, and then the next three shots were there, and then the next four shots, one of them was a cold bore shot, was, well, you can see it got worse. I am going to revisit this one. Sorry, that's a different powder. I did have minimal rounds for BM2. I only had one target, so so this is the only target. So 3 shots there and then 3 shots there. So I'm going to go back and revisit that at 32 grains, probably 32 and 32 and a half. Next we had the BM8208 at the same seating depth. One of those is a cold bore shot. Yes, there's 2 targets there. Didn't get much good out of that. Average velocity with the BM2 was 2,313 feet per second with a deviation of 95 feet per second. It's quite excessive. The 8208 at 32 and a half grains, and there's another target there. You can see that. Definitely not a group, and I'm not looking at going back and revisiting that at this stage. That gave me standard velocity of 2,070 feet per second. Possibly needs a bit more powder in it to stabilise it. I don't know, but I was getting some pressure spikes with that powder charge beyond 32 and a half grains. So that's not worth, I'm not worth worrying about that. Now 260H, I had the 2 groups on. Now what I was doing was, according to the last video, I put 3 shots on, adjust the scope up half a mil, and to shoot another 3, and then adjust back down again and shoot the last 3. That's 34 grains of 2206H, and that gave me a standard velocity of over 10 shots, 2,554 feet per second with a 48 feet per second spread. That was quite interesting. That gave me the best velocities and lowest spread, but as you can see there, the second group, the 2206H, the group was quite large. Not worth worrying home about. 34 grains of 08. First group, second group, and third group. 2 shots in there, 1, 2, and then the third one there. Now that gave me a standard velocity of 2,250 feet per second with its deviation of 94. Interestingly, I'll just go back again. The 8208 shot like crap. Actually gave me a deviation of 139 feet per second, which was pretty crap. I don't think it's any good for this cartridge anyway. I've used that powder in 223 and it's been fantastic behind a 55 grainer. Now things start to get interesting. 34.5 grains of AR 228, 3 shots. And then 1, 2, 3. And 3 shots. 1, 2, 3. I dare say I don't know which one that was because it could have very well been me. Or wind. A gust of wind coming through, so yeah. 34.5 grains. That gave me a standard velocity of 2,348 with a deviation of 32, which is pretty good. So I'm going back and revisiting that one. And I'm going up to, I think it's 30, because the seating's out a bit further, so I'm going to go up to 36 grains. I was 35 possibly. What did I load? What did I load? Yeah, 35 grains. So I'll try this load again with a new seating depth, but I'll also go up another half grain and see what it does with that 125s. Now, the 09. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. So first group, second group. Yeah, very average. That's 35.5 grains of 09. That gave me a standard velocity of 2138 with a deviation of 72. And then the last 3-shot group in there. So nothing really worth worrying about. There were some close ones there. I'm looking at going back and trying that again. Both the 36 and 36.5 going on the standard new seating depth of being 40 thou further out. Now, 36 grains of 09. This is where my chronograph gave me an error because I think it was too cloudy. And it definitely didn't like 36 grains at that seating depth, especially when the projectile had to run out at 100th thou jump. So I suspect the 100th thou, the jump to the lands was is part of the issue here. So we'll try it with 10th thou off, just to be fair. Now the 165s. Interestingly, this is where I started putting the cold clean bore shot onto the target. First shot was here. 1, 2, 3 first group, 1, 2, 3 second group. That was seated at 2.1150. They are now seated at 2.150, not 115, but 150. So another 35 thou further closest to the lands, which brings it 10 thou off the lands. The third group, 1, 2, 3. So tightening up. Groups are getting better. Definitely worth looking at. I am going back to that load, the 165s of 09. That's 34 grains. I'm going back with 34.5 with a new seating depth and 35 grains with a new seating depth. It's 35 grains with the new seating, old seating depth. There's 4 shots there. 1, 2, 3, 4. One of those is a cold bore shot. Probably that one. 1, 2, 3 second shot. So 35 grains with 09 and the 165. I reckon tighter seating depth, and we'll see how we go. So the 34.5, I'm actually going 34 grains in this last load here. I'm actually going 34.5 with a new load and 35. So somewhere in there is going to be the sweet spot with that. And of course, the last group for that was a phenomenal little group. 1, 2, 3. You see the cold bore shot's actually getting closer to the center of the target as its barrel settles in. My average velocities for that I couldn't tell you because that's what me. Oh, sorry, no, I can. 34 grains, average velocity 1983, standard deviation 62. 35 grains, 2023, standard deviation of 39. So I gave it good groups. So I reckon with a little bit more seating depth in there, should be good. Now the 180s. And this is what brought me to the thinking of it was an issue with the seating depth as much as the powder charge. And my eyes with a 10 power scope. This is the 180s. That's this sucker, and that's what the reamer was originally chambered for. That's that test chamber drops in there. That's what it's originally chambered for. 100 meters. There's 4 shots in that hole, 3 shots in that hole. And of course, then I got cocky and then blew it out to that. So that's the load at 35 grains of 09. That's 2.140. The original depth should be 2.150. That's about 10th alpha lands, 2.140. I think it's at now from memory. Yeah, 2.140. So, yeah. And that's what it shot best at 10th off the land. So that's part of the reason why I'm going back and redoing it at the other projectiles that showed promise with a new powder charge and hopefully on a brighter day so I can actually get some good readings. My average velocity with the 185 grain Sanars is 1888 feet per second with a standard deviation of 56. Now, granted, the velocities here that I quoted in the past weren't anywhere near as what this was, but that was based on a different chronograph on a different day. So hopefully with the new ones we'll find new brass, new projectiles, new seating depth, 10th off the lands. We'll actually get much better performance out of it. Beauty of a test chamber is that I can easily drop the projectile in because it's the same 5 groove as what the original barrel is, and I can drop that in and I can measure how far that sticks out. I can measure the distance between that and that just by checking the distances here. Go like that, zero that off, drop that in. Right, so I'll go to the case mouth, of course, and I can set that so it's 138. So if I add another 10th out of that, so it's 10th off the lands, I know that I've got to be at least 150 thou overall length right on that. So that works out well, that I can work out how far off the lands I am and how much I need to adjust. So there are the results. Some good, some bad. Worth going back and looking at. Definitely with the new brass to make sure that everything's spot on. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.